So I had an MRI for my lower back and they said, the bulging disc is there, but it's not pressing on the nerve, so that's not the issue, and they've sent me over to pain management or something else. If this sounds like something that you've heard in the past, then this video is going to really help you understand what's going on, why this kind of approach is so very frustrating, and what you actually need to do to resolve the issue rather than going around in circles like so many do, feeling like they're pulling their hair out. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Michael Fatiga, the lead osteopath and spine specialist here at Back in Shape. We help people around the UK and all over the world fix their back pain from home and get back in shape for the long term. And today we're going to help you understand this issue, understand what it actually means to have that bulging disc and why actually it might well be the cause of your symptoms, and why ignoring this and saying, well, it's there, but it must be something else, is the wrong way to go. Firstly, let's address the fact that the bulging disc isn't actually contacting the nerve, but understand that you're in the position lying down. And the fundamental role of these discs is to resist load bearing, to act like a little shock absorber, to allow the disc to, or the vertebra to move in all sorts of directions, pivoting around on that soft squidgy disc. And when we compress down on the disc, the fluid that's in the middle starts to try and bulge out to the side, and it stretches the ligaments of the annulus. And this creates a temporary bulge through movement if I jumped or if I moved around, and that's ordinary, that's healthy, that's perfectly fine. Where the disc becomes bulged on, for example, the MRI, or becomes degenerate, is where that impact, maybe it's a repetitive strain rather than a one-off high force action, is enough to damage some of those ligaments of the annulus fibrosus, the layers of ligament that's holding the gel in the middle. And so that when we compress down, it bulges beyond a point where it's happy to do so. And therefore we see these sorts of bulges on the MRI because the disc doesn't pop back up to its nice position. The simple fact of the matter is the lying down analysis position is the position where the disc has the least amount of load on it. And even in this low load environment, next to no load environment, the disc is still in a position where it's bulging, indicating the degradation of health of the tissues at this level. It could be L4-5 or more commonly L5-S1. These are the two sections in the lower part of the lumbar spine. This one and this one, these last two discs that are most commonly involved in lower back pain, either causing just lower back pain or lower back injuries just causing lower back pain, or symptoms of sciatica down the leg. While some of you will actually experience more pain when you go to lie down flat on your back, as is necessary for an MRI imaging, we actually explain why this occurs in many of you in a video which we've linked down in the description. The simple fact of the matter remains that you will often find that off weight bearing is the most pleasant position, and on weight bearing or with extra weight bearing, load bearing on that back is something that makes things dramatically worse. This is why when you've got that back, you feel vulnerable when you're moving around, and the thought of someone putting weight onto your back is absolutely terrible. The simple fact of the matter is, for most of you, being in that off weight bearing position, like when you're in the MRI, is a more comfortable position, and being on a load bearing position is a less pleasant one. And it's reasonable to suggest that it's that load bearing position that is aggravating those particular discs that are more injured than the others in your spine. When we take a step back and we actually look at the MRI, you're going to look at generally the side profile, although you might have seen the cross-sectional view where we're taking slices this way through the spine. But the side profile, the spine will look something like this. And what you'll commonly see is that the disc in question, let's say it's L4-5 or L5-S1, comes up as being very gray on one of the contrast images of MRI, but the others come up as nice and white. And what that is showing you is that there is a greater degree of fluid being held onto the healthy white discs and a greater degree of loss of that fluid or dehydration occurring at the level of the discs lower down that are injured or bulging. And you'll also notice quite often there might be one of those discs, let's say L4-5, that it's actually not bulging that much, but it's gray, it's dehydrated. And whereas maybe your L5-S1 disc might actually be gray, dehydrated, and you can see the bulge at the back. The point here is the hydration of those discs, the color of those discs, is indicative of the health of that segment. We have to understand that the spine discs are this part here, but they operate as a segment. They blend with the ligaments on the back. They do similar functions to the ligaments on the back part of the spine to support effective, healthy spinal movement and spinal function. And so if the discs are showing significant signs of degradation in health, then we can understand that that segment is not going to be as healthy as it otherwise could be. And although this may be dismissed, if you asked pointedly the practitioner, the medical professional, whoever you're seeing, if that disc looked like those, would that be better? Would you choose artificially, if you could, to swap that disc that's grey with that disc that's nice and white? They would hardly say no, because they know that that is not a healthier disc. In amongst all of this, it's helpful to take a step back and understand that imaging doesn't generally tell us something that we didn't already know. Remember, you went into the clinic or booked the appointment or spoke to the specialist complaining of back pain, complaining of sciatica. It got worse when you put load on it. And you've probably done some elements of examination in the clinic room or maybe yourself to realize that actually when I compress these discs, when I load these discs, when I move these discs into precarious positions, I am able to re-elicit symptoms. I'm able to recreate the pain. I'm able to cause myself more trouble, either in the immediate moment or shortly afterwards. You know that those tissues are damaged. Furthermore, there is not going to be a scenario if you're coming in with back pain and sciatica and it's made worse through specific physical movements or relieved with the abstinence of such physical movements. You are not going to find a scenario where improving your back health through proper rehabilitation work is not going to be necessary. No matter what the MRI comes back with, even if you end up having surgical intervention, you still need to do the rehabilitation work. We've got a dedicated podcast on the things that you should be thinking about if you are someone in the category where you've been perhaps facing the prospects of surgery. But certainly going, oh, well, the disc is bulging, never mind, just go and do pain management and take painkillers is not the answer. So if it's not the disc bulge, what is actually causing the pain? And it is the disc bulge, simply put, but there are going to be two kind of scenarios where you're going to experience pain. Number one is very relatable to other injuries, and that is that actually when you do something, when you move, when you sneeze, when you did that particular movement, you actually teared some of the tissue. You created some tissue damage. And it might be more a fact that there's been these repetitive little micro tears that have happened over the years. It's helpful to understand this in the context of another injury. If I'd sprained my wrist, for example, going that way, and I've damaged the ligaments here, the ligamentous tissue is almost identical to the disc tissue, the annulus tissue, okay, that has been damaged in the case of disc bulges. If I sprain my wrist and then I do movements that do that repeatedly by accident or on purpose, I am going to feel perhaps some sharp or acute pain in that area where I'm damaging the tissue. And that is akin to you maybe sneezing again and creating a little bit more of a tear, a little bit more of damage to that area. Generally speaking, this is very, very minor. But the point remains, it'll be, generally speaking, very sharp, very local, and you might get a little bit of referral at the same time. That is pain radiating to other areas of the lower back, the buttock, or the leg. But generally, that kind of pain will kind of, that will spike up and then it will kind of settle a little bit to a degree. Now, it might settle at a reasonably high level of pain, but still it will generally be a spike and then a kind of a drop down in the intensity. And that leads you to the second part of pain, which is much more what a lot of you are going to be wrestling with on a day-to-day process. And that is the buildup of inflammation. Now, in the spine, when we have an injury in, say, the wrist, for example, the wrist swells up. You can see it very clearly. Well, in the spine, we have these finite little spaces where the nerves come out. And we can see on this model here, we've got a little bit of a disc bulge happening just here, and that occupies the hole where the nerves come out. And if we create a little bit of an aggravation, a little bit of tear, a little bit of extra damage to those tissues, doing something that we shouldn't be doing, perhaps we're picking up our 45-kilo dog to put him in the back of the car, or some other thing, maybe we've got a toddler, and we're having to pick them up and carry the shopping at the same time, and we didn't really want to, but we had to do it anyway. And that can create that aggravation of the area. But then we get the inflammation that builds up around the tissues, the little bit of swelling. And when we've got that congestion occurring in these spaces here, that's where you'll often feel particularly sore, for example, the morning after or when we're in bed. Why is this? You haven't caused any damage in bed, but the aggravation, the minor irritation of those tissues during the course of the day or through specific activities creates this inflammatory reaction that then builds up slowly, especially as we're still, for example, overnight. And then we wake up in the morning and go, oh gosh, my sciatica is really painful, or my back pain is really painful. And it's not that the disc has actually contacted the nerve in that moment, although it might have done in the previous example where we're talking about more specific forces at play. It's that the congestion in that region is aggravating the nerves. And therefore, if we did the MRI, we're not going to see the disc bulging hitting the nerve or compressing the nerve against the wall. We're just going to see a disc bulge that's there and that's it. Ultimately, having these disc bulges, whether they are directly pressing on a nerve in the moment that you had the MRI image or not, indicate a substantial loss of health to that particular segment of the spine. And it's often very easy to compare that to other sections of the spine when we actually look at the imaging. And understanding and being appreciative of that is important. Being in denial and saying, well, there's disc bulge there, but it's not that, it must be something else, when you clearly have a back injury, is really never going to resolve the problem. Instead, we need to acknowledge there's a lack of health there. There probably has been a lack of health there for a long period of time. And you can't be specific, neither can the practitioner, generally speaking, be that specific to the specific nuance, this tiny little area where it's actually torn or whatever the case may be. But what you can do is be robust in your rehabilitative work and start to do proper relief-based work and strengthening-based work to rebuild strength, health, and integrity of that area of the back. The reason we say this as such a matter-of-fact way is because we've had so many people over the years, both patients in clinic and members of the program, that have all of these sorts of scenarios coming up. And when you do work that drives you towards building the attributes of a good, healthy spine, which, by the way, should have been done before the injury, but often isn't, you will get better. You will find that your back improves its resilience to load. You will find that those symptoms of pain, discomfort, sciatica start to subside, and you actually get back a degree of pain-free mobilization and movement from the day-to-day. This is going to work substantially better than waiting now 6 weeks, 6 months for an appointment with a pain management person who's probably going to give you some painkillers or tell you it's all in your head. And the only reason I say that, rather tongue-in-cheek, is because so many people in the comments on our various social media posts say that. They say, oh, I waited 6 weeks for this appointment and they just said, oh, it's all in your head, just talk yourself out of it, or something like that. I'm being a bit tongue in cheek, but the point remains, if you've got clear physical degradation of an area of the body, why not just work to improve the health of that area? Because you know it's not as good as it otherwise should be. Or maybe it was good and it's become injured through no fault of your own, or maybe through not necessarily looking after yourself as well as you should be doing, or doing something reckless. We do many sports, myself included, do things like jiu-jitsu. There is a chance that me, with a healthy, strong back, could get injured. But the good news is, if you are in that category and you've got a healthy, strong back, objectively speaking, because sometimes there's a bit of a misunderstanding whether you actually have a healthy, strong back or not, or this perception that we do when we actually don't. If you are in that category where you are strong, when you do injure yourself, you will bounce back very quickly. So hopefully this video has helped you, if you've had this particular unfortunate conversation in the past, get a bit better understanding over why maybe you've been told that, but why it's not true. Why, if you've got these bulging discs, why not do the work to rehabilitate them? There's tons of other resources on the website, on the YouTube channel, and via the program that will help you start to do this. And I'd strongly recommend, if you haven't already, check out the recent video we did on the core 5 for spine health, because those are the essential distilled exercises that one should do to improve the health and status quo of their lumbar spine. The best time to do that is before you injure your back, before you're aware that you have these bulging discs or damaged discs. But the second best time is as soon as you know about it. So start now and make some improvement towards your back health. It won't be a pain-free process. You'll need to learn some of these things. And to the degree you can't do those specific exercises, you will aggravate yourself. But the only way to learn them is to practice them, and practice them thoughtfully, diligently, maybe using a camera like this in front of you to watch your form, reflecting on what you're doing. And gradually, one step at a time, you will make improvement. Hopefully you find this video helpful, motivational, enlightening maybe. If you do find it helpful, give it a thumbs up. Consider sharing it with someone else who's been struggling with their disc bulge. Maybe they've been going around in circles. It'll give them a bit of clarity and a pathway forwards. And we'll see you in the next video.